When you look back at the 80s, it was an interesting time. Bad hairstyles, awesome music, cyberpunk, an amazing time for horror movies and not only, and the rebirth of the game industry. There are tons of games using themes from the 80s, and with the ever-growing popularity of Stranger Things, it's inevitable to spawn even more. This is what in Crossing Souls caught my attention in the first place. The setting. The game strongly reminded me of Stranger Things and The Goonies. I was born in the 80s, but I don't remember that much from that time. I consider myself a kid from the 90s. Despite that, I love what the media produced at that time. I grew up watching tons of 80s movies. Robocop, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Goonies, Indiana Jones, Evil Dead, The Thing, The Beyond, and many more. As for games, I played the usual ones. Dig Dug, Super Mario Bros., Lode Runner, etc. Crossing Souls has the right amount of nostalgia attached to it, so I know I had to play it someday. But it's not only that. Let's see if the game is worth your time. The story takes place in a small town in California right at the beginning of 1986. An ominous storm hits it and takes out the electricity everywhere. Purple lightning strikes just behind the mountains. In the morning you take control of Chris, one of the 5 kids you get to know. He is woken from his younger brother Kevin, who found something amazing in the woods. Since the family dog got hit by a car and died, he always gets himself into trouble. They agreed to meet in their treehouse in the woods after Chris gets the rest of the gang. He goes around the town to gather their friends, Charlie, Big Joe and Matt. On their way to the treehouse they meet friends and foes. Kevin is eagerly waiting for them. He explains while he was doing a wheelie, he found a dead guy. None of them wants to get in trouble, so they decide to check him out and keep it a secret. On the dead body they find a weird purple crystal in the shape of a pyramid. They get back to Matt's house because he is the science guy to make some educational guesses. The light that emits is attributed to the energy it consumes, and if you don't have a power source, it drains from your life. He also says that it's some sort of key or a portal. He reached to this conclusion based on his research of Egyptian mythology, more specifically the legend of Duat. This is the realm of the dead where all souls are waiting for judgment. The stone can transport you to another dimension. Matt attached the stone to one of his gamma bars to create the source of energy that it requires to see what will happen. They can now see ghosts. Realizing that the device could be dangerous in the wrong hands, the kids agree to not misuse it. However, Kevin suggests to try and find his dog, and Matt agrees. As a kid of science, he wants to find out more about Duat. In the meantime, somewhere in a secret base, the main antagonist Major Oros is a bit upset about the theft of the stone. He sends one of his henchmen to retrieve it. The Major needs the stone in preparation for the one-day war. The kids go to Chris and Kevin's house and see the dog, but he runs away. They quickly realize he is leading them to somewhere. After this, the gang starts encountering, fighting and helping ghosts. Eventually the dog leads them to a local cemetery where they have to beat a ghoul and other ghosts disturbing his resting place. After the fight, the dog is happy to see Kevin. And then Quincy Queen, the leader of the Purple Skulls gang, shows up. Before and after finding the stone, the kids encounter the gang a couple of times and even get themselves in skirmishes with them. Quincy Queen tries to recruit Chris, but he refuses every time. At the graveyard, he wants the device for himself. I'm going to give you a spoiler warning. Click on the time on the screen to skip this part of the video. This section is not that far into the game, but it's extremely important for setting up the mood of the game. If Quincy Queen gets the device, this means that Kevin will no longer be able to see the dog and runs away. This scene still gives me goosebumps. It comes from nowhere and you don't expect a kid to die in a video game. And no, you don't get to revive him. I thought at first that this is going to be one of the main goals, but it's not. This happens around 2 hours after the beginning of the game and I was already attached to the characters. It took me 2 hours because I like to explore everywhere. If you don't do it, it will take you less time to reach to this point. Quincy Queen gets the device and runs away. After the funeral, Chris closes himself, feeling responsible for his little brother's death. Days later, Matt shows up and manages to convince Chris to go after Quincy Queen to get the device and say goodbye to Kevin. The others will help too. From just a regular day playing in the woods to saving the world. This is a quick summary of the plot. While not groundbreaking, it managed to invest me in the world and characters. It's also shifted the tone gradually. It goes to some dark places I didn't expect. Gut-wrenching places. The story is not perfect. There are a couple of plot holes, one was really early on, which ruined my enjoyment a bit. Also, I would love some background on Major Oras. He's just a villain who wants to conquer the world just for the sake of it. His character is paper thin. Cool, but paper thin. But the kids are developed much more. Everyone has their own character, albeit a bit stereotypical. I love the interactions between them. Not everything is smooth. Through the whole game, everything is narrated by someone mysterious. Crossing Souls is an action-adventure game with great pixel graphics. On the Kickstarter page, the dev describes the game as inspired by classics like The Legend of Zelda with orthogonal 2D view. The two main things you do in the game are fighting and solving puzzles. There is some platforming and it's good. The first is combat. All kids have their weapon of choice and ability, except for Kevin. The other kids have different fighting styles, speed, etc. He is used mostly for the puzzles. Chris is the leader and main character. His baseball bat does decent damage, he can jump and climb on specific surfaces. Can also redirect and or reflect projectiles when hitting them with the bat. Matt is the science guy, have a laser gun, can lock on into enemies and hover for a brief period of time with his rocket shoes. Doesn't do much damage, but he can hit enemies from far away. Charlie is the girl in the gang. She's the most agile and using a rope as a whip, have fast swings, great for crowd control. Does a bit less damage than Chris. Last but not least, Big Joe. He is the strongest. His punches are on the slow side but do the most damage from the gang, can pull and push heavy objects. He also has this attack that looks like a fart, which I found useless. All characters have different health bars, but the most important is the stamina, which you have to keep an eye on. Besides walking, every other action takes a chunk of that bar. When you're out of stamina, the character is tired and stops moving for a second. You have to be careful managing it, because it will lead you to taking damage. To avoid this, you have to switch often characters. It's essential. I like using Big Joe because of his strength, but with him I had to be extra careful because of his speed. I had to learn how much punches each enemy takes before attacking me, so I can move out of harm's way. What I often did was punch a couple of times and roll out of danger. In general, you need to learn how enemies are behaving for an easy time, but with multiple ghosts are around, each with different attack pattern, it's easy to get hit when using Big Joe because of his speed. Because of that and the stamina management, it's essential to switch playing with all the characters. I like that. It makes you play with all of the kids instead of choosing a favorite. They are a team after all. As a whole, the combat is not very deep, but switching characters add a bit of variety. The regular enemies are fun to fight. When the game mix and match them, you have to start prioritizing your targets. Kill the exploding zombie to damage the rest of the enemies, or go first for the shooting one. Fun stuff. However, the standout are the bosses. They are fun to find and it's a requirement to switch between the kits to use their abilities. You will die a lot on them because you have to learn their attack patterns and what kit and when to use it. Some may find this frustrating, but for me it's part of the learning process. I've read people having a hard time with the final boss. I found him a tad disappointing. Short, not very difficult or creative compared to the rest. There isn't any upgrades or RPG elements. For better or worse, I'm fine with that. There are only 3 items to aid you: a candy to restore your health, blinding flash for stunning enemies, and bombs for blowing specific walls. The flash is super effective, gives you time to react when surrounded to pick your target. But once you hit one, the stunning effect is gone for him. After finishing the game, I realized I didn't try the bombs in combat to see if they are effective. I doubt it because of the way they work. It takes time to explode. If anyone tried it, let me know in the comment section. Unless you are careless, you will have enough from the 3 items throughout the whole game. From time to time, to spice up the gameplay, there are some mini-games. One is set up as a beat 'em up, going from left to right, another is reminiscent to the Battletoads jet bike level, but not so difficult. The one I had problem was the shmup section. I didn't particularly like the movement. You have to avoid projectiles without shooting, but your ship bike thing doesn't move immediately when you press the stick. It has weight and this caused me to die the most there. The other part of the gameplay are puzzles. Here the Duat stone come into play. It does not only let you see ghosts, but it also provides new ways to interact with the world. Most are not too difficult, but by the end you will encounter some brain teasers. At first glance they might seem difficult, but they are not. You need to use the abilities of the kits. This is also true for traversing the levels. However, there is one which a lot of people, including me, are having a hard time. Another spoiler warning. I want to spoil the solution for the puzzle to save some headache. Click to the time on the screen. There is a mine with floor that looks like a chessboard. You are there to find a diary. A ghost tells you somewhere beneath the ground there is a treasure hidden, but he can't decipher the code on the wall. To do that you need the map to show you the solution. After some platforming you get it, but it's still confusing. The hint given to you is not clear. I had to look it online and it still doesn't make sense to me. I think even the developer know that the puzzle is very difficult, so they included a second solution. To see what's beneath the tile you need to put bomb. There is a minecart full of explosives. You have infinite bomb supply so you can blow up the place. This puzzle frustrated. A better hint is needed. I don't mind a tough puzzle, but the solution has to make sense in the context of the world. This doesn't. When you first take control of Chris, you start in his room, filled to the brim with details, feeling like a real kid's room. Posters, toys, fish, console, etc. After that you are free to roam in the small colorful town of Tajunga, presented in a beautiful pixel art. It's a vibrant and lively, with arcades, restaurants, people on the streets. You may want to live in a place like this if the circumstances were different. Most of the time you will be in the town and the surrounding areas. Forest, secret military base, factory, the obligatory sewer level, etc. You go through the town once more after being changed for story reasons. It's dark, grim, and rain contributes to the oppressive atmosphere. Overall, I'm happy with the level diversity. Most of the cutscenes are using the in-game assets, but at several places, hand-drawn animations will play. They feel like pull-outs straight from some animated show from the 90s. They're good, but my gripe with them is they felt way too short, and beside music, no other sounds are playing. There is no voice acting throughout the game with one exception, but a gasp, scream, cry or whatever would make those scenes much more impactful. Often music, in movies especially, based in the 80s, is some style of synth. I know that even to this day people are making and listening that kind of music. I'm not a huge fan. To my surprise, I love the soundtrack. Besides, since there are several orchestral tracks which reminded me of the Goonies. The composers, the 2 names on the screen, I don't wanna butcher their names, did an amazing job. I split good soundtracks in 2 categories. I wouldn't listen it outside the game, I'm listening to it outside the game. This one fits in the latter category. The OST consists of 52 tracks. The composers did an excellent job of setting the right mood. In the beginning you will hear melancholic, careless, playful tracks. It's a holiday for the kids and it's setting up the tone for adventure. gathering their treehouse, going to play some arcade games, checking out the shop for new comics, chatting with friends, get stuff. But when it's time for a boss fight, a heart-pumping synth track play and you know things are serious. As for the mini games, you really feel like racing for your life. When it needs to hit in the feelings, it does. The music is what elevates the game for me. One of my all-time favorite soundtracks. On the technical side, I encountered two bugs, both identical. The character I was controlling got stuck in the environment. It forces me to restart at my last save, but thankfully it didn't cost me much to get back where I was. Speaking about saving, you can do it on specific points presented as floppy disk. They are spread evenly throughout the levels, so even if you die, you don't have to backtrack too much. The only time when the game auto-saves is just before a boss battle. A minor problem with that is that you have to watch, after each death, the cutscene before the fight. You can speed up the dialogue, but it's still annoying. As for controls, they are solid, no complaints here. I tried a couple of minutes to play with mouse and keyboard, it plays fine, but then I switched to my Xbox One controller. The game plays much better that way. After all, the dev recommends using a controller. Besides minor hiccups, I enjoy my time with Crossing Souls. It's a very solid adventure. The story starts simple enough, kids on their vacation, but then it goes through Egyptian mythology with a pinch of sci-fi. Think Goonies meets Stranger Things. Some might even say Super 8. I don't know if anyone remembers that movie, besides me. The graphics are great, with a lot of different locations to visit, controls are solid, and as I said, the music is the standout here. And if you watch the spoiler sections, don't worry, there are still plenty to see and experience. This is one trip to the past worth taking. One more thing, what's up with that guy? I see him at 2 or 3 places throughout the game. It makes me curious, is this guy something like G-Man from Half-Life? If you know anything, let me know in the comment section.